There was a time when the world revolved around just one sun, a singular power, maybe two at best, but that time is fading. The global system we once understood is spinning faster, more chaotic, more unpredictable. And now a second sun is rising, not one that seeks to eclipse the first, but one that brings balance to the light. In a world moving away from unipolarity, a new gravitational force is emerging, not to dominate but to stabilize. That force is India. Step back, take a broader view. What you'll see is fragmentation, not in the sense of collapse, but of reorganization. After decades of relative American dominance post-Cold War, we're entering a new era. A multinodal world. China's rising unapologetically, assertively. Russia still holds its cards, and new formations like BRICS are reshaping how nations do business, build alliances, and assert identity. The old map is fading, the new one is being drawn in real time. In such a scenario, you don't just need more power, you need counterweights, balance, fail-safes. Like a spacecraft, if one thruster overcorrects or malfunctions, the mission fails. But with a well-calibrated backup, you stay on course. India is that stabilizer, not fully in the Western Bloc, not signed and sealed with China or Russia either. It exists in the in-between, the liminal space where influence is not dictated, but earned. A massive, vibrant democracy of 1.4 billion people, nuclear capable, economically surging, and on pace to overtake the likes of Japan and Germany in the coming decade. But what truly makes India extraordinary isn't just scale. Its philosophy. It doesn't want to dominate the world. It wants strategic autonomy. That's revolutionary in today's environment. In a world where superpowers chase influence like a zero-sum game, India says, let me rise but not to rule, let me lead but not to control. That singular idea makes India a natural balancer, not a hegemon in disguise, not a puppet of East or West, but a sovereign force capable of engaging with the United States, speaking to China, and collaborating with the global South, all with legitimacy, all with clarity. Its neutrality in global power struggles isn't a sign of weakness, it's the new strength. It's what allows India to be a bridge state, a nation that can speak across divides, build coalitions without ideology, and act with clarity where others act with caution or coercion. Now, think from the perspective of the United States or any major player seeking long-term global equilibrium. You don't want a direct confrontation with China, not now, not in this economy, not when the stakes are so high. But you can't afford passivity either, so what's the move? You look for distributed resistance. You empower states that can offset influence. You bet on stability over showdowns. That's where India fits in perfectly. India shares not just a border with China, it shares history, friction, and a lived reality of strategic tension. There have been skirmishes, the line of actual control has been anything but calm, yet in all this, India does not provoke war. It seeks strength through restraint, wisdom through preparation, power through purpose. It isn't reckless, it's resolute. And while China has scale, planning and manufacturing might, its ascent hasn't been accompanied by global trust. Markets are wary, neighbors are vigilant, democracies remain skeptical. China moves with force, but India moves with belief, and that's the difference. Power without trust creates fear, but power with credibility creates cooperation. That's what makes India indispensable. Look at geography. India's location alone makes it vital. Wedged between the Himalayas and the Indian Ocean, controlling trade choke points and regional access. Whoever partners with India gains not just a market, they gain leverage, reach, and resilience. It becomes a gateway to a billion-strong democracy and a firewall against unilateral aggression. India's rise isn't loud, but it is deliberate. It's not a sprint, it's a stride, and behind that stride is a mindset that says, let us grow together, not at each other's expense. That mindset matters, especially in fields where ideology used to determine partnerships like AI, green tech, space, semiconductors. Today, those collaborations require trust, scale, and adaptability. India offers all three, not with rigid doctrine, but with strategic intent. It's building its data sovereignty, engineering digital infrastructure, leading in space missions, and doing it while maintaining its own cultural and democratic fabric. And that's the deeper truth the world is starting to see. India isn't rising despite its identity, it's rising because of it. Its complexity is its strength. Its diversity is its innovation engine. Its sovereignty is its signal to the world that you can be modern and traditional, powerful and peaceful, ambitious and balanced all at once. So in this age of realignment, the world doesn't need another empire. It needs equilibrium. It doesn't need domination. It needs dialogue. It doesn't need more walls. It needs bridges. And if there's one nation standing ready, capable, and willing to be that bridge, it is India. Not a second sun that burns to outshine the first, but a force that lights a new path, a new balance, a new world. There's a shift happening, quiet, deep, and decisive. A shift not just in power, but in how that power behaves, distributes, and stabilizes the world around it. For the longest time, strategies of containment were synonymous with confrontation, building walls, deploying fleets, escalating tensions. But today, a new form of containment is taking shape, one that doesn't shout but signals, one that doesn't provoke but balances, and at the heart of it all stands India, charting a path of containment without direct conflict. India is not confronting China head-on in the traditional military sense, but it's building a strategic perimeter through resilience. It's strengthening its naval presence across the Indo-Pacific. It's hosting joint defense exercises. It's investing in indigenous military tech and quietly reinforcing its command over key choke points in the Indian Ocean. This isn't just defense, this is deterrence by design. The United States doesn't need to scatter bases across every island or escalate every skirmish to flex its presence. If it recognizes and respects India's independent posture, it gains something far more effective, localized resistance with global legitimacy. India is already resisting in real, tangible ways. It bans Chinese apps. It limits tech investment from across its northern border. It builds its own semiconductor capability. It aligns with Japan and Australia through the Quad while still maintaining dialogues with Russia and the global South. That's not fence-sitting, it's strategic agility. So rather than pressuring India to fall neatly into a Western bloc, the smarter approach is to co-design a new kind of global architecture, not US-centric, not China-centric, human-centric. A decentralized framework where India leads in its own lane while contributing to a larger stability equation. India doesn't need to outpace China. It just needs to slow down the unchecked momentum and force recalibration. That's what containment looks like in 2025, not Cold War style escalation, but systemic correction. It's time to think like engineers. In any complex system, from a rocket engine to an AI network to a global supply chain, the golden rule is simple: avoid single points of failure. The global economy, for too long, allowed itself to become overly dependent on China. It centralized for efficiency but sacrificed resilience. Then came trade wars, geopolitical friction, and suddenly the fragility was exposed for all to see. So what's the fix? You don't tear down the system, you distribute the load, you diversify, you de-risk. That's exactly what's happening. From Tesla to Apple, from chip makers to energy firms, global companies are looking for their next hubs. And all signs are pointing toward India, not because it's cheap, that's yesterday's logic. India is no longer just about labor arbitrage. It's building something deeper, a scalable, digital-first, reform-driven economic ecosystem. Production, linked incentive schemes are rewarding value creation. Aadhaar and UPI have created digital infrastructure more sophisticated than many developed nations. India's pushing forward with semiconductor fabs, green energy clusters, defense corridors, and AI hubs, all with long-term planning and policy continuity. And there's another dimension to this movement: values. When you manufacture in India, you're not handing over your IP to a tightly controlled, opaque regime. You're building within a messy but democratic framework that respects contracts, upholds free speech, and encourages independent institutions. That's not just ethical, it's smart business, because when the political winds shift, a legal framework offers a lot more certainty than ideological control. India sees the game clearly. It knows every major power wants influence. So it's playing multi-alignment with surgical precision, not picking sides, but optimizing outcomes. That's good for business and even better for resilience. Supply chains work best when they're flexible, decentralized, and responsive. And India is proving that it can be a core node in a multipolar supply web, not as a replacement for China, but as an intelligent, adaptive alternative. And that's crucial, because in the years ahead, we can't afford brittle systems in a volatile world. This shift isn't just about factories or shipping routes, it's about civilization models. In 2025, we see a clear divergence. Some autocracies are becoming more efficient on the surface, but they're also becoming more brittle, less adaptable, less innovative. Democracies, on the other hand, are messy. They argue, they stall, they disagree, but they evolve. India is living proof. Loud, chaotic, contradictory, and growing. It's not always efficient, but it's authentic, and in a world leaning dangerously toward control and conformity, that authenticity is priceless. This matters for America too. If the United States wants to lead the free world, it needs to walk with those who keep that world open, not always by agreement, but by shared values. Sure, India and the US have differences on trade, on global positions, on policy, but those differences are a sign of strength. In a real democracy, collaboration is born of negotiation, not obedience. And then there's the narrative layer. Across Africa, Southeast Asia, Latin America, the so-called global South, India has credibility the West simply doesn't. It's been colonized, it's risen through poverty. It speaks not from a podium, but from shared experience. That makes it relatable, that makes it trustworthy, and that's not just diplomacy. That's how you build systems that don't force nations to choose between prosperity and freedom. India is showing that you can launch moon missions, develop AI, manufacture semiconductors, and still let people vote, protest, argue, disagree. That's the kind of future we should be betting on. Not a world of clean lines and top-down control, but a decentralized, collaborative, evolving system. And India isn't just part of that future, it's shaping it. Let's talk systems integration. The future won't be built in silos. Tech and defense will not evolve separately. They're already overlapping: AI, space, cybersecurity, energy. These are not just sectors, they're strategic layers of a new architecture, and India is becoming a critical node in this framework, not just as a user of technology, but as a co-creator. On the tech side, India has built real-time digital payment systems, biometric IDs, and is scaling AI capabilities with the scale and speed few can match. On the defense side, pairing American R&D with Indian engineering talent and cost efficiency leads to faster prototyping, cheaper iteration, and more resilient systems. This isn't a traditional arms deal. This is joint infrastructure for tomorrow. In space, India's ISRO has landed on the moon, orbited Mars on a shoestring budget, and is quietly becoming a global partner for low-cost innovation. In cybersecurity, as quantum threats and AI warfare loom, having India in the intelligence sharing loop is essential. It's not about surveillance, it's about systemic integrity across cloud, finance, defense. This isn't just a partnership, it's architecture, a dual-stack system where democratic allies build technologies, protocols, and platforms that reflect not only their interests but their values. And India brings something rare: agility. Where others are stuck in bureaucracies, India experiments. Where others hesitate, India builds. It's not trying to become another version of the US. It's becoming India 3.0, a sovereign, innovation-driven force that scales, not just economically but philosophically. If we want a future that works for everyone, not just the top 10% of the globe but the next 6 billion, then India is not just a partner, it is the path, because the world's next big leap won't come from boardrooms or war rooms. It will come from shared code, open platforms, and brave ideas, and India is bringing all three. So, in a century defined by technology, conflict, and change, we don't just need more power, we need better power. Power with balance, power with trust, power that builds bridges, not walls. And in that future, India isn't just relevant, it's essential. When we talk about the global south, when we talk about the future of development, diplomacy, and technology, there's one country that stands out not because it's loud, but because it's lived the pain points. India understands the complexity of underdevelopment, of limited infrastructure, of resource constraints because it's been through it. That lived experience gives India a rare kind of credibility. The United States can't replicate it. China can't. Europe certainly can't. And that's why India isn't just another voice in global forums, it's a resonant one. India doesn't arrive in other countries with lectures. It doesn't impose ideology. It doesn't wrap its offerings in strings or conditions. It shows up with partnership, not patronage, and that's a huge distinction. When India talks about solar energy, digital inclusion, healthcare access, it's not hypothetical. This is a country that built the largest biometric ID system in the world, that wired remote regions for telemedicine, that developed affordable life-saving generic drugs at global scale. When India speaks at BRICS summits or G20 forums, the room listens not because it's the richest or the strongest, but because it's relevant. It's still, at its core, a part of the global south, and that gives it soft power, the kind of trust that GDP and missiles can't buy. For Western democracies, especially the U.S., this is a critical advantage, because if you're trying to win the trust of the global south, not just temporarily, but for the long game, you don't go direct. The message won't land, history is too tangled, but if you partner with India, you get an amplifier, a translator. India knows how to take abstract ideals like freedom, sustainability, innovation, and localize them. It doesn't preach, it connects. That's not propaganda, that's empathetic diplomacy, and from a systems design perspective that is far more powerful than any top-down PR campaign. Now think about the next 50 years of innovation. Green hydrogen, AI in agriculture, clean water, decentralized finance, all of that sounds good on paper, but it only matters if it scales, and the only place it can really be stress tested at scale is in the global south. That's why India isn't just important, it's essential. It has the population diversity, the climate volatility, the income gaps, and the institutional memory. That's what you need if you're building systems for the future, not just for polished urban labs, but for real-world pressure. India becomes the interface layer, not a gatekeeper, a bridge between the developed world and the emerging one. Trust will be the most valuable currency in the next era, and India's got it. Nowhere is this more clear than in energy. India's energy demand is set to double in the next 2 decades. That's not a crisis, it's a huge opportunity, because if India can meet that demand with renewables, with storage, with decentralized grids, it proves a model the rest of the global south can adopt. And India is already on the front lines. Climate impact isn't a theory here, it's daily life, heat waves, floods, air quality. India doesn't have the luxury to delay action. So what's emerging is a wave of necessity-driven innovation, mass-scale water recycling, low-cost air filtration, eco-friendly building materials, all designed for survival and mass distribution. Compare that with high-cost solutions in Western labs that take years to reach scale. India is optimizing for affordability and access, not just performance. And here's where it gets even more powerful. India is doing all this while being the fastest growing large economy on Earth. It's not following the classic path of dirty industry first, clean up later. It's trying to leapfrog straight into green growth. If India pulls that off, the implications are global. It means we can grow without repeating the environmental damage of the last century. That's not just impressive, that's revolutionary. It becomes the world's sustainability testbed. It tells us how to power Mars or rural Africa or any region where resources are tight. India is showing us what's possible when survival meets scale. Now, zoom out. Let's look at the map. You can't build a global system for trade, for defense, even for satellite internet without factoring in geography. And India's location isn't just convenient. It's irreplaceable, sitting between East Asia, the Middle East and Africa, right next to the Strait of Hormuz, overlooking the Indian Ocean, a highway for more than 70% of global maritime trade. This is natural geostrategic architecture. You want flow, access, agility. You want India in the mix. Militarily, India isn't trying to build an empire. That's important. But it is building layers of smart defense bases in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, joint patrols with the U.S., France, Australia, and real-time surveillance of the Indo-Pacific. All of that is aimed at preserving freedom of navigation. Not conquest, balance. You don't want a fully militarized ocean. That's not sustainable, but you do need resilience. You need alternatives, and India offers exactly that: a buffer, a checkpoint, a stabilizer between unpredictable zones like the South China Sea and the Gulf states. From a Western perspective, especially for the U.S., this is a rare win. You don't need 1,000 new bases if you have one trusted regional partner with intelligence, infrastructure, and discipline. India delivers all three not because it's copying NATO, but because its interests align with regional stability. And then there's space and cybersecurity. India has near-equatorial launch pads, perfect for low-cost, fuel-efficient satellite deployment. It has the triangulation ability for orbital coverage. It's already running drone defenses and developing AI threat response systems. So when you think about the next layer of defense beyond just missiles and tanks, when you think about data corridors, orbital security, and logistics agility, India's not just involved, it's central. The future of defense is smart, it's distributed, it's adaptive, and for that, you need credible autonomy and strategic geography. India delivers both, but there's one more dimension we rarely talk about, and that's soft infrastructure. The wiring behind global stability, talent flows, trust networks, and shared narratives. And here again, India is quietly rewriting the script. In 2025, one of the most underrated forces shaping the world is the Indian diaspora, especially in the U.S. Over 5 million Indian Americans not just living, but deeply embedded in leadership roles, running Fortune 500 companies, leading NASA missions, driving AI in Silicon Valley, writing legislation in Washington. That's not coincidence, that's cultural bridge building, and that's powerful. This isn't the typical migration story, it's full spectrum integration into the engines of global innovation. What you get is not just influence but connection. Understanding, a kind of trust architecture between India and the West that can't be fabricated. So when you look at the big picture economy, technology, diplomacy, geography, defense and culture, what you see is this: India is no longer just a rising power. It's a balancing one, a connector, a testbed, a translator, a stabilizer, not trying to dominate, but trying to develop. And in a world full of polarity and fragmentation, that might just be exactly what we need most. In today's world, military power alone doesn't define influence. Strategic location matters. But what matters even more is how deeply a nation is woven into the systems that drive progress: technology, healthcare, academia, and venture capital. And right now, there's one nation that is quietly becoming indispensable to the future: India. This isn't about old school diplomacy or handshake politics. This is about system design, how alliances emerge not through coercion, but through code. Through shared interests, common goals, and human connection. And India, with its deep integration into sectors that shape the world, is building alignment not from the top down, but from the ground up. This kind of alignment doesn't need to be enforced. It grows naturally. It grows from collaboration between Indian and American engineers, researchers, doctors, entrepreneurs, artists. It's found in startups, in universities, in hospitals, and in boardrooms. This organic partnership creates a living bridge between two democracies, not built with treaties, but with trust. And trust, in this AI-driven, hyper-connected world, is gold. But to trust, you need familiarity. And that's where India plays a different game. While some nations exert influence through force or fear, India exports something subtler: culture, yoga, Bollywood, spiritual teachings, a shared English language ecosystem that connects minds across continents. In a world overloaded with noise, India provides something people recognize. It feels human, it feels known, it feels real. Culture today is the new API. It's how people interface with ideas, and India's culture. It's scales that makes India more than a country. It makes India a soft power supernode in the global network, and this power extends beyond entertainment and language. It reaches into diplomacy. When India speaks on global stages, it doesn't speak alone. It carries with it the experiences and trust of a massive diaspora, one that's rooted yet scattered across continents: East Africa, the Gulf, Southeast Asia, North America, Europe. These are not just people. These are connectors. They make India a distributed presence in the world's conversations, and that's a rare thing. For the United States, this means the partnership with India isn't about a deal. It's about access to global talent, to innovation, to human adaptability. In a world where alliances fracture and ideologies clash, this connection stands out. It isn't transactional, it's aspirational, and maybe that's the biggest strength of all: shared dreams, because in the next few decades, it won't be rigid treaties that define power. It'll be flexible alignment, shared goals, shared risks, shared solutions, and with India, that alignment is already happening. It's not theory, it's code, it's people, it's practice. But let's be clear, India isn't looking to play sidekick to anyone. It has options, real ones, economically, militarily, diplomatically. In 2025, India is not waiting to be chosen, it's choosing, and that changes the entire game. That's where many Western strategies go wrong. They assume India will automatically align. But systems don't work that way. They align when interests align, when respect flows both ways, and when sovereignty is not treated like a favor, but a foundation. If the U.S. forgets this, others won't. Russia already has deep defense ties with India. We're talking joint missile systems, submarines, aircrafts, not as history, but as present reality. China, meanwhile, is moving quietly, offering soft influence through BRICS Plus initiatives, trade routes, and digital experiments like the digital yuan. India is resisting for now, but India is pragmatic. If one path becomes too narrow, it will pivot, not from loyalty, but from logic. And that should be a warning to anyone who thinks the current alliance is guaranteed. For the United States, this is more than a foreign policy issue. It's a systems-level risk. If India shifts toward a Eurasian tech finance, military axis, or leans deeper into regional networks that exclude American input, the cost isn't just losing a partner. It's losing a central axis of influence in the Indo-Pacific, the most contested, consequential region on the planet. That's not just about defense. That's about shaping how the future is built ethically, democratically, inclusively. If India turns elsewhere, the opportunity to co-create the next global architecture disappears. Because here's what India is saying: don't manage us, don't contain us, respect us. See India not as a country to support, but as a node to partner with. Collaborate on AI, climate resilience, infrastructure, education, security. These are not favors, these are shared challenges. Solve them together. Don't bring conditions, bring vision, because if America fails to meet India at this new table, others will, and they won't need to shout. They'll realign the system quietly, with efficiency, with scale, and with long-term effect. In geopolitics, the loudest threat is often not the most dangerous. The quiet realignment is, the silent shift in momentum, the unnoticed turn in loyalty, the update that gets coded into the system without an announcement. If the U.S. lets India drift, the damage won't be immediate, but it will be deep, and it will be irreversible. Inattention is the real enemy here, not ideology, not nationalism, not even opposition, just the simple mistake of taking a friend for granted. And that mistake could cost the West not just a partner, but the ability to help shape the rules of the 21st century. The future isn't being decided in summits anymore. It's being coded in labs, negotiated in digital ecosystems, and felt in the values that flow through every network, every platform, every global system. India understands this. The only question is, who else does?